May 1941, mid-Atlantic. A Hurricane fighter sits strapped to a catapult welded onto the foredeck of a merchant freighter. The pilot climbs into the cockpit knowing this will be a one-way flight. No aircraft carrier nearby. No airfield within 500 miles. When he launches, he has three options: ditch in the freezing Atlantic and hope someone fishes him out before hypothermia kills him, bail out and hope his parachute works and someone spots him in the water, or fly until his fuel runs out and accept whatever happens next. None of these options are good. All of them are better than letting the German bomber circling overhead call in U-boats to slaughter the entire convoy. This is not desperation. This is calculated British naval innovation solving a problem conventional thinking said was unsolvable. The Germans had created a weapon that dominated the mid-Atlantic air gap, the 1,000-mile stretch of ocean where land-based aircraft could not reach. British convoys sailed through this gap blind and defenceless. German Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor bombers hunted them like wolves, circling beyond anti-aircraft range, radioing positions to U-boat wolf packs, occasionally swooping down to sink ships themselves. Between January and June 1941, Condors and U-boats working together sank over 2 million tons of Allied shipping. Britain was bleeding to death in the Atlantic, and every conventional solution failed. The Royal Navy had escort carriers under development, but they would not be ready until late 1941 at earliest. Shore-based fighters could not reach the gap. Merchant ships had no ability to defend themselves against aircraft. The Admiralty needed a solution immediately, not in 6 months. The solution they devised seemed insane. Mount a catapult on ordinary merchant ships. Put a fighter on the catapult. When a Condor appears, launch the fighter knowing full well the pilot cannot land again. The aircraft and potentially the pilot are expendable. The convoy is not. They called them CAM ships, Catapult Aircraft Merchantmen. 35 merchant vessels were fitted with catapults and assigned a single Hawker Hurricane fighter. The ships continued to carry cargo, wheat and oil and ammunition across the Atlantic. The Hurricane sat on the foredeck, fueled and armed, waiting for the moment when a pilot would climb in and commit to a mission he might not survive. The concept violated every principle of efficient resource use. You were throwing away a 40,000-pound aircraft and risking a trained pilot to maybe shoot down one German bomber. The mathematics seemed terrible, but the Admiralty understood something the mathematics could not measure. The psychological impact of even one Hurricane appearing in the mid-Atlantic gap would change German calculations entirely. The catapult system was brutally simple. A 3-inch rocket motor accelerated the Hurricane from 0 to 90 miles per hour in less than 300 feet. The acceleration pulled 6 times the force of gravity. Pilots described it as being punched in the spine by a giant fist. The Hurricane had to be specially modified to survive the launch. Reinforced fuselage attach points, strengthened tailwheel, modified throttle linkage so the engine could be run at full power before launch without the aircraft moving. The catapult installation weighed 17 tons. It occupied deck space that could have carried cargo. It required a Royal Navy crew of 12 specialists to maintain and operate. Every CAM ship that put to sea was sacrificing cargo capacity and adding top weight for a weapon that might never be used. The Hurricane itself was a standard Mark I fighter, the same aircraft defending Britain during the Battle of Britain. 8 Browning 303 caliber machine guns in the wings, 1,200 horsepower rolls, Royce Merlin engine, maximum speed 328 miles per hour. Service ceiling 36,000 feet. Range with standard fuel load, 460 miles. That range number is critical. 460 miles means the pilot could fly 230 miles from the ship and return. Except there is no return. The merchant ship keeps sailing. There is no flight deck to land on. That 460 miles becomes a countdown to when the pilot must choose between ditching, bailing out, or trying to reach land that probably does not exist within range. The first CAM ship operation was Empire Flame in May 1941. The ship carried a Hurricane flown by Flight Lieutenant James. The convoy was attacked by a Condor. James launched. The catapult worked perfectly. The Hurricane accelerated down the rails and into the air. James chased the Condor, which immediately turned and ran at maximum speed back toward France. The Hurricane was faster but could not catch the Condor before fuel became critical. James returned to the convoy, circled the ships, and ditched alongside a destroyer. He was pulled from the water alive. The The Condor escaped but did not attack and did not radio U-boat positions. The mission was scored as a success. Even though no enemy aircraft was destroyed, the presence of a fighter changed German behaviour. August 3rd, 1941. Convoy HG/70 from Gibraltar to Britain. The CAM ship was Empire Wave. The Hurricane pilot was Lieutenant Robert Everett. A Condor appeared at 15,000 feet, circling the convoy beyond anti-aircraft range, clearly radioing their position. Empire Wave turned into the wind. The catapult crew prepped the Hurricane. Everett climbed in, started the engine, ran it to full throttle against the holdback. The catapult fired, 6G acceleration. The Hurricane cleared the end of the deck and climbed. Everett gained altitude and turned toward the Condor. The German pilot saw him coming and dove for the cloud layer. Everett followed. The Condor was fast for a bomber, nearly 250 miles per hour maximum speed. The Hurricane was faster, but not by much with combat load. Everett closed the gap through disciplined flying and superior engine power. He opened fire at 300 yards. The 8 machine guns tore into the Condor's port wing. The German aircraft staggered, trailing smoke. Everett fired again. The Condor's port inner engine caught fire. The German bomber rolled over and dived toward the sea. Everett watched it hit the water and break apart. He had destroyed Germany's most effective anti-convoy weapon. Now came the hard part. Everett had been airborne for 42 minutes. His fuel gauge showed less than 1/4 remaining. The nearest land was the coast of Portugal, over 200 miles away. Portugal was neutral but would intern him if he landed there. The convoy was now 30 miles behind him, still steaming east. He could not land on any ship. He radioed the convoy that he was bailing out. He gained altitude, rolled the Hurricane inverted, released his straps and fell clear. His parachute deployed. He hit the water and activated his life vest. The destroyer HMS Wanderer spotted his parachute and altered course. They pulled him from the Atlantic 40 minutes later, cold but alive. The Hurricane sank in 4,000 feet of water. This became the pattern. Between May 1941 and July 1943, CAM ships made 9 combat launches. 6 resulted in confirmed Condor kills or drives. 3 pilots were recovered alive. 1 was never found. The mathematics still looked terrible. 9 aircraft lost, 1 pilot killed, 6 Condors destroyed. But the strategic impact exceeded the losses by orders of magnitude. German Condor operations against Atlantic convoys declined sharply after August 1941. Luftwaffe records show Condor crews were ordered to avoid convoys with catapult fighters. The psychological effect was enormous. German bomber crews could no longer circle convoys with impunity. They had to assume any convoy might launch a Hurricane. The 1,000-mile air gap remained, but it was no longer undefended. British merchant seamen who had watched Condors circle overhead, calling in U-boats, now saw their own fighters launching to drive them away. Morale impact mattered. The Germans had no equivalent system. The Kriegsmarine never developed catapult fighters for merchant raiders or auxiliary cruisers. German naval aviation doctrine focused on land-based aircraft and never solved the mid-Atlantic coverage problem. The Luftwaffe had the capability but never implemented anything comparable. British willingness to accept one-way missions for strategic effect represented a doctrinal advantage the Germans never matched. American escort carriers began entering service in late 1941. These were merchant hulls converted to carry 15 to 20 aircraft, with flight decks for landing. They provided sustainable air cover for convoys. CAM ships were withdrawn from frontline service by mid-1943. The Hurricane catapult concept was obsolete the moment proper escort carriers arrived. But for 2 years, CAM ships were the only air defence available in the mid-Atlantic gap. If you are enjoying this analysis of British naval innovation, subscribing helps the channel and ensures you do not miss the next one. The cost-benefit analysis favoured CAM ships despite the losses. Conversion cost per merchant ship was approximately £50,000. Each Hurricane cost £12,000. Training a merchant crew to operate the catapult took 2 weeks. Total investment per CAM ship, £62,000. Compare this to an escort carrier conversion at £1.5 million and 6 months construction time. CAM ships provided immediate capability at 5% the cost of the alternative. The CAM ship concept proved British naval architects understood resource optimization under constraint. They had limited escort carriers. They had hundreds of merchant ships. They had surplus Hurricane fighters from Battle of Britain production. They had trained pilots. Combining these created a capability that did not exist before. The fact that each launch destroyed an aircraft was acceptable, because the alternative was losing entire convoys. Post-war analysis showed the Condor threat peaked in spring 1941 and declined sharply by autumn. CAM ship operations directly contributed to that decline. German aircrew morale dropped when they faced fighter opposition in areas they expected to operate safely. Condor losses to all causes increased. Luftwaffe command reduced Condor operations against convoys and shifted them to reconnaissance roles where they faced less risk. The strategic effect of 9 Hurricane launches exceeded what the numbers suggested. The one-way mission concept was not repeated post-war. Modern naval doctrine requires recoverable aircraft. Jet fighters are too expensive to throw away. Helicopter ASW platforms need to return to their ships. But in 1941, with Britain facing starvation through U-boat blockade, the Admiralty made the calculation that pilots could be asked to accept one-way missions if it meant convoys survived. 3 pilots did that job and lived, 1 did not. 6 German bomber crews died. Dozens of merchant ships reached port that might otherwise have been sunk. CAM ships represented the kind of innovation that happens when conventional solutions fail and time pressure forces unconventional thinking. The Royal Navy took an obsolete fighter design, a simple catapult system, and merchant ships already at sea, and created a weapon system that changed German behaviour in the Atlantic. It was not elegant, it was not efficient by peacetime standards, it worked when it mattered most. The Hurricane on the catapult was not a symbol, it was a weapon. The merchant seamen who sailed under that fighter knew it might save their lives. The pilot who climbed into that cockpit knew he might not come back. The German aircrew who saw it launch knew their safe hunting ground was no longer safe. British naval innovation did not require perfect solutions. It required solutions that worked under pressure, delivered with the resources available, executed by men willing to take the risk. That is what British Naval Command proves in every video. The Royal Navy did not wait for ideal circumstances. They created weapons from what they had and used them with doctrine that worked. The CAM ship was unconventional, expensive in pilots and aircraft, and absolutely necessary. It filled a gap nothing else could fill when the war was being lost in the Atlantic. The convoys got through. That is what mattered. The one-way missions saved lives by the thousands. British naval engineering excellence meeting desperate strategic necessity, proven under combat conditions, validated by results. The Hurricanes launched from merchant ships are at the bottom of the Atlantic now. The convoys they protected delivered the cargo that kept Britain in the war.